If you missed the news, El Salvador has become the first country in the world to accept Bitcoin as its official currency. Bitcoin is now accepted as legal tender along with the US dollar, which has been accepted as their national currency since 2001. This is a huge step towards Bitcoin being more widely adopted, but the problem is just how El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin. See, Bitcoin is without a doubt the safest, most secure currency in the world. There's no question about it, but only in its purest form. And that's the point that El Salvador is missing. The whole idea behind Bitcoin and the reason it exists is to create a peer-to-peer value exchange platform. If I want to send money to a friend, it has to go through a bank. And if that friend is overseas, then it gets even more complicated. There's fees and it actually becomes a nightmare. I hate sending money overseas. With Bitcoin, there is no middleman. You can send money directly to your friend, directly to their wallet. Doesn't matter where in the world they are. It's totally anonymous, totally secure, and totally 100% reliable. See, El Salvador has taken Bitcoin and created a bank around it. They've created an e-wallet called Chivo, which can be downloaded onto your smartphone in El Salvador. And then there's a network of ATMs where you can seamlessly, I don't know how seamless it is, but so they say, seamlessly transfer US dollars into Bitcoin and back and forth. Now, this is great and all, but it sort of defeats the whole point of Bitcoin because there's now a government that has access to all your financial data, where you're spending it, what you're spending it on, just like they would under a traditional banking system, just like every other government in the world has access to. So anyone using it has lost their anonymity. It's centralized, meaning it's hackable, and probably, to be honest, the juiciest pot of gold for any hacker group at the moment. So it's not that secure either. All the selling points of Bitcoin have just been wiped off. So what is the point? Because there is a point, and just because they're not using Bitcoin in its traditional way and they've sort of stripped off all its fantastic features, it doesn't mean it won't be hugely beneficial for the country. The first big pro is remittances. About a quarter of the country's GDP comes in the form of remittances from expat Salvadorians sending the money home, usually from the United States. It translates to about $6 billion US dollars, but it's super expensive to send money overseas. So of that, the traditional way anyway, of the $6 billion in remittances sent to El Salvador in 2020, $400 million was fees. So the thinking is remove the fees and everyone is slightly better off. It makes sense, but that alone isn't worth adopting a brand new currency for. So the second big pro, and this is probably the reason they did it, they can stop relying on the US dollar and sort of have a little bit of independence. Up until they adopted Bitcoin, the US dollar was the only currency the country used, but to be a small country using someone else's currency is really hard. El Salvador and all these other little countries get all the downsides of inflation, like costs going up and all that, but none of the upside that comes with quantitative easing, like a cash injection into the economy. As well as that, currency substitution means the local government doesn't have any control over their economy. Now, Bitcoin won't solve that. The government has no control over Bitcoin and never will. So their economy will still be at the mercy of something else, but at the very, very least, it won't be another country. There are some cons associated with it, and one of those is that their credit rating just dropped. It was bad and now it's worse. So their GDP is about $8,000 per person, and from time to time, they do need help from the IMF, loans and the sort. The IMF is sort of like the World Health Organization, but for the economy instead. They're like the leading light that guides all of the world's economies. Now, the relationship between a single country and the IMF is similar to how, say, you or I would borrow money from a bank. Rich, stable countries can borrow money at a low interest rate, and unstable ones have to pay a higher rate. Following the announcement that El Salvador will be adopting Bitcoin as their national currency, Moody's, which is a credit rating agency, downgraded the outlook on the country from bad to worse. They were at a B3, which is bad, and no one really wants to be at a B3 anyway. It's considered non-investment grade. Now they're even worse. They're at a CAA1. I don't really know what that means. I don't think you know what that means. It doesn't really matter. It just means that they have to pay a higher interest rate, and it's harder for them to do business with countries internationally. I really hope it works out for them. At least they're trying something new and innovative instead of blindly following the US like so many other countries do and hoping it gets better. Sure, they missed the point with Bitcoin, but it's not the end of the world. And who knows, maybe people will be allowed to use their own private wallets in the future instead of the government's app. This is just the start of what will be an incredibly interesting case study. It'd be so cool if Bitcoin went to like $1 million and El Salvador becomes like the richest country in the world. It would really stick it to the IMF.